Hi everybody, it's Caitlin, and today we're going to go over some of the ways to start planning your novel, aka story structure. So there are a lot of story structures out there, and each have their merits and demerits, but today we're going to go over the three most popular ones that I've noticed. The three-act structure, Freytag's pyramid, and the hero's journey. The three-act structure is pretty simple. You have your setup to establish your world and all that good stuff going on in it. This is to let the reader get to know the everyday life of your cast and become familiar with the characters and the world rules. Followed by your confrontation, the introduction to what should not be or what is the issue. This is usually where a problem arises, and finally, the resolution. This is how our hero overcomes the issues brought up in the second act. The hero finding the magic sword and slaying the dragon could both be considered the resolution in the third act. This story structure is super simple and lets you work out the very most basic of your story points. What is the setup? What is the confrontation or issue? And how is it resolved? If you're struggling to start your story, this is certainly a good spot to start. However, because it is simplicity, it can leave a lot of room if you struggle with story planning. Our MC lives in a magical world, a dragon's destroying his village, and he finds a magic sword and slays it are examples of this three-point setup. But without more planning, the question can start flowing. Why is the dragon there? How does he find the sword? So if you choose to use this story structure, you will have to fill the blank spaces yourself. If you're really good at story structure and are willing to put the effort into adding more steps within the structure, little sub-moments, and you enjoy planning, that way this structure might be good for you. Next is Freytag's pyramid. Very similar to the three-act structure, Freytag's pyramid contains a setup or exposition, a confrontation climax, and a resolution. However, Freytag's pyramid also includes a rising action and falling action. These are in-between moments that can help you better explain your world while building it for yourself. We have our everyday life explained in the exposition, our magical village, followed by the rising action. This is usually where the inciting incident occurs, say magic stones discovered in the village and call the dragon. A rising action could be what draws the hero to move. Maybe he's super fond of the people there, I don't know. The climax could be the dragon destroying the village, and maybe our hero falls into a pit below the city while trying to save the people. Next, our falling action. This is where our hero is brought to the deepest, darkest spot in the novel and feels like all is lost. This is where we then plop in our plot device and give him the magic sword to save his village, aka our resolution. Freytag's pyramid is another simple way to begin our story structure. It offers a lot of creative freedom while still keeping us on task. Do keep in mind, though, that this creative freedom can still go off the rails. If you're a fly-by-the-seat-of-your-pants kind of writer, this structure might be good for you, as it isn't stifling but isn't too open either. It can also be really good for those who love to plan everything out too. And finally, we have the hero's journey. Now, this is going to be the most complicated of the three we'll talk about today. It's essentially a 4-part 12-stepper. First, you have your call to adventure, which involves 3 steps. The ordinary world, where our introduction to how things are is. The call to adventure, where we know something's up and the hero is chosen to fix it. Then, the refusal. Our hero insists there must be someone else who is more qualified or a better choice. Part 2 is the ordeal, which includes the introduction or exposition of a mentor to guide our hero towards their destiny. Then crossing the threshold, where our hero either chooses to follow that destiny or has no flippin' choice. Finally, there is a test in this act meant to establish enemies and introduce allies. Part 3, the transformation, includes the approach our hero must take, aka how they gonna do this biz, another ordeal or confrontation they must overcome, and a reward for overcoming that hardship. Then, finally, our 4th section, called the hero's return, includes the road or journey back, atonement, the path they have to take in hardship to atone for refusing to do the journey in the first place or whatever, and finally, their actual legitimate return, where the story finally ends after they've made some major change to themselves or the world. This structure is for those who like to do a lot of planning, and if you like to plan a lot, go for it. It is a tried and true structure that was really common in ancient storytelling and has withstood the test of time. All this being said, there are far more story structure methods out there, and I encourage you to do more research into the subject to find what best suits your novel purpose. Take your time finding what works best for you and your style so that you are comfortable and productive with your work. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you found it at least a little bit helpful. I'm still figuring out the channel's format and upload times to find what works best, so I hope you stick with me while we work out the kinks. I post new videos every Thursdays or Fridays, depending on what I can get to. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to hit that like button and subscribe. You can also follow me on Twitter. I also have a Patreon. Patrons get all kinds of extra monthly goodies from me. If you're interested in seeing more content, definitely check that out. Links are in the description.